I remember when I was a kid, I had some interest in, or I read something about alchemists, I guess in the Dark Ages, 14th, 15th century or something like that, right? It's sort of the birth of geology, the birth of chemistry, the birth of some of the sciences. And I was just a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, something like that. And I remember reading something that said, you don't choose to be an alchemist, you're chosen. Interesting statement, but as a 12-year-old, I thought, well, I didn't even know what that meant. I thought, well, what is it? Merlin comes into your bedroom in the middle of the night, like Harry Potter, and taps you on with his wand and say, "We've chosen you." And it really wasn't until more recently, and as a result of doing a session at one time in one of my training courses with Ed, where he gave me a blind target, and it was the cue was Alex/who ? My name /who ? And even after I did the work and asked him what the cue was, I really didn't understand the cue, and he explained to me that it seems like everyone comes into this world with a pre-set preference, your makeup, who you are. And curiously enough, my sketch was on this Alex/who ? Was this very gentle scene of an individual, a life form, walking through these hills towards a observatory. It was more of a mathematical quest where there was something that I could understand, I could calculate it, I could figure out what it was. And whenever I could do things like that led towards an adventure, some kind of an exploration adventure, the observatory being the ultimate perhaps in the symbolic idea of adventure, I was the happiest. And I think after I did that session, I think back of my career, I think, well, you know what, it's true, because when I was a kid, I used to love to go hiking and I'd get a group of guys together and we were kids, 12, 13 years old, we'd go backpacking, we'd go canoeing down the Allagash, and I always loved those trips. The idea of that process of starting out on some kind of an event, planning it, performing it, and ending up at a certain destination. And then I think about my academic career as a geologist. It couldn't have been closer to that, because geology is all about exploration. But it's very scientific. There's a rhyme and there's a reason to it, and there's a study, and there's crystallography, and there's metamorphic petrology, and there's structural geology, and all leads up to this course of exploration with a definite destination that's based on facts that you've learned and studied and practiced. And then I think as it reflects to my remote viewing, it's exactly the same thing. The training that I went through with Ed was just that. There was precision to it. There was a right and a wrong answer to it. There was a mathematical equation, so to speak, that got you through the remote viewing process. You started off in the beginning of the journey, and you made your way to the middle of the journey, and then you ended up at a destination. And that to me is a perfect fit for who I am. So that's why I think of remote viewing as something that fits my hard wiring so well. But back to the fact of the alchemists, is that through this process over the years, I've come to realize is that statement, you don't choose but you're chosen, speaks to that hard wiring. Is that we've all chosen or been granted a certain hard wiring in life, and it's almost as though Merlin came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You will do this type of process." I think anybody could do it, just as anyone, if they're willing to put the time in, can learn how to play the piano. If they have a good enough instructor and they're dedicated to the practice of the piano, will end up being a good piano player. Some will be extraordinary piano players. So similarly, there's those fundamentals with remote viewing. I think if you lined up a dozen people, you could get everybody to remote view, just as you could line up a dozen people, you get everybody to learn how to play one song. The question then becomes, who will continue to go on and learn how to play more than one song? And even if you pass that hurdle, who out of that continues will have a natural talent for it. So you just keep on getting further and further levels of expertise, depending on the big pool that you start with. It gets whittled down. So relative to remote viewing, I think everybody can do it. I'm convinced of that. But I don't think everybody does, because it does require you to have a certain preference to it, a certain fascination with it.
I don't think I was ever skeptical of it actually working. I always believed, once I heard about it, I always believed that it could work, but I never believed that I could do it the way other people were doing it. And so even when I was learning, I was still skeptical that, I know this works, but maybe it's not going to work for me. Maybe I won't be able to make it work. And I was skeptical, just skeptical of my own self as I was going through the learning process. Am I really on target, or am I really off target in a remote viewing session? And it was really the first project, the Christina White project with Ed, that I finally had that 100% assurance in myself that that the remote viewing really does work, and that I can do it accurately enough to find or do anything with it that I want. Mostly what I use it for personally now is wagering and trying to use remote viewing to make money, and been quite successful at it. So, but the other work I've done has been just projects, like small things that come up, like the friends want, like Alex was another member of our group, was doing some work for a friend of his who was trying to find out what happened to a family member in World War II, and I did some blind targets for him on that, and it was very interesting, especially when Alex, independent of me, came up with the same data, and we could confirm what actually happened to that person. And it turns out that and we didn't know anything about the case before we started working on it, and it turns out that what actually happened was what we were describing in our session. The big thing that I've used it for is, looking for sanctuaries, safe places to go in the event of something happening, something big happening, natural disaster or something like that. I've looked at properties, like to buy properties up in the mountains, and I've been comparing different properties by using remote viewing, which property would be the best, investment.
It actually started back in 2000 when my mother had Coast to Coast on the radio, and she called me in and she said, I want you to listen to, Major Ed Dames. He's this guy, Major Ed Dames, he's talking about this new skill called remote viewing. And I sat and I listened, and it just sparked an interest in me. I proceeded to, the next day I went online, I checked out his website and started looking into his DVDs and whatnot, and pretty soon I had them in my hands, and I was, and from there it was just, it was the best thing that I'd ever found, ever. It changed my life. The whole idea that there's something that you can get from the future, whether it's a future event or even things from the past that you can go back and get information about things that, I was curious about, when Jesus walked the earth. It basically answered any questions that I ever had. I could go back and find out whatever I wanted to. At first I was very skeptic about remote viewing, and I saw that it actually started to, it was actually working. I found lost items I hadn't found in years. I found lost items for friends, and even future events as far as the next phone call, the next person I was going to call, small things like that. I could see that it was actually starting to, that it works. The whole thing just flourished into something that was bigger than I thought.